All right. Hey, everyone. And welcome to JavaScript Breakpoint. So Ben is back, finally. I think we had two sessions without Ben.
Really? I thought it was just one.
Possibly. It felt like
Because
two.
you thought
It
we
felt
were
like
going to miss
two.
you yesterday as well.
Yeah.
Oh,
Ben, it felt like
sure.
two. And yeah, so we have Mike back, and then we have Robert joining us, filling in for Xander today. Robert, do you want to take a quick? Yes.
Yeah, maybe tell us a bit about yourself, Rob.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. There we go. Put the man on the spot.
Gosh, thanks for the warning. No, I'm a software developer for pretty much my entire professional life. A lot of that time spent in JavaScript, TypeScript, working internationally at the moment for a company called Flux. We build browser-based circuit board design software. So yeah, the problems I've been facing for the last 18 months or so are somewhat unusual and under-blogged about online. It's good to check in with the news every now and then. So glad to be here and be a part of the discussion.
Rob, can I ask you something? Can you ramble about functors and monads?
If I have to, sure.
Just making sure we got the right stand in for Xandor.
Bringing the big Xandor energy.
You mentioned noise. That's my favorite.
I can. So on a just on a perhaps unrelated note before we dive in, I don't have any have any guys really played around with data-oriented programming, or not really?
Prolog. Prolog.
So kind of Clojure-ish kind of style,
So Clojure is data-oriented programming adjacent because of things like Crux and Datomic. And in Clojure, what you'll usually encounter is something called datalog, which is a Prolog derivative, not cynically derivative though, just derivative. Yeah, Prolog is interesting, like fact-based programming stuff. I really want to like it, but it makes my brain melt every single time. I guess if you spend as much time doing it as you do other approaches and other languages, it becomes a bit more natural and yeah, just comfortable. But because of how rare it is to actually encounter it in the wild, and like when you do encounter it in the wild, it's like this one weird thing that functional person did 7 years ago, and it just kind of ran for the last 5 years, and now someone needs to do it, and you're the person who knows what the word sort of means, so go at it.
Yeah, and it's mostly for data, more database kind of focused than you wouldn't be able to write any meaningful UI in it, as far as I understand.
I was gonna say, can anyone give a 30-second explanation?
No, because that's gonna be on Prolog Breakpoint next week. So,
so you can do anything with fact-based programming, and there is the argument that any software is just like dealing with data and munching it and moving it around. So the elevator pitch for fact-based programming is that you define a set of facts in your program or your system. So JavaScript logo is yellow and contains text, and the text is a J and an S. And then you can do associations. And then you can do associations between those things. And you can query their relationships and their behaviors, and you can do lots of things. It is probably worthwhile if you're interested in the concept, trying to solve some of the advent of code stuff in Prolog.
Yeah. Okay. But let's get into it. I'll put a timestamp here, so anyone who doesn't want to listen to us go on about Clojure and Prolog and all that fun stuff. All right, let's.
The talk brings it up, and it's like, why are you guys talking about this?
Yeah, like come on, guys, get with the program. No, so like the reason why I brought it up, and like I just wanted to have a surface discussion on it, and then Ben went like full on submarine mode.
So, hey guys, to kick things off with JavaScript Breakpoint, we're going to talk about closure.
No, because I've been kind of reading up a bit about like kind of JavaScript implementations of kind of that kind of approach, which I've been finding very interesting, and I actually find a bit more like giving you a lot of the benefits of functional programming, while still not being as big of a paradigm shift for the average developer. As you would get with functional programming. I'm glad Xandor isn't here now, because he'd tell me like there is no paradigm shift. OOP is the paradigm shift. Like functional programming is vanilla coding. Okay,
that's the coding you teach to kids. Remember?
Yeah, functional programming is just plain coding. OOP is the aberration. All right. Well, yeah. All right. Let's. Jeez, all right. Slide number 1. Let's talk about StyleX. I was pretty excited by this, purely just because it's just nice to, regardless of how StyleX pans out, it's just nice to see some movement in this direction. I've been waiting for Panda to become a bit more production ready, so just having some other players in the field in terms of trying to figure out how to get the good parts of CSS and JS without the bad parts, to me is a win.
So I want to chime in there. They fixed the type issue that was like making it really less comfortable to define as design system or design tokens, let me rather say. They fixed it like I think a month ago, 6 weeks ago.
Okay.
So,
and that would be Panda, right?
Yeah. Super excited about that. I have been using it in a project for like some of their JSX utilities, which are super duper cool. I would argue at this point, I would actually be happy to use it in a production project.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll definitely check it out. You're using it with Astro, right?
Yes, I'm using it with Astro and Shadcyan.
How painless is talking about Panda now, not StyleX? How painful or painless is the actual integration in terms of in the build process? Because you have that thing where it does the CSS and JS and then it extrapolates that into actual real CSS files. How easy is that to integrate?
5 minutes. Like
really?
Even it feels like you're setting up Tailwind, just like a different flavor.
Okay.
The only thing is you do need to do an initial generation of your design system.
Okay.
So once you've set up all your tokens and stuff like that, you run Panda generate. But then like it gives you a whole bunch of nice little utilities that like I like to use. So they give you like flex elements as a component that have like all the props on them already, and it makes it quite nice to work with, which I'm fond of. It just makes things feel a little bit more declarative.
For the non-obvious benefit to that is you'll see with a lot of the CSS and JS style component-based stuff, if anyone's used Material UI is probably the best corner point here. The SX prop that takes the little object with all the style helpers. The problem with that is that if you don't make that object referentially transparent, then you are losing a whole bunch of optimization. So you have to pull that out into like a use memo or a use SX or whatever to get almost any benefits from a performance thing. And like that's really, really icky. And until React Forget becomes a thing that's going to continue to be icky, the way you work around that is by creating elements where you can take, instead of an object, you just take it as props on the element. And as long as you're passing a value type, like a gap value type, a number, primitive, whatever, referentially stable stuff, then you don't have to do the icky thing at the moment. So that's a non-obvious benefit to that. And just we'll fuck that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Rob,
so
do you
it
do
makes your
any?
props
Sorry, no, go ahead.
it makes your props really nice because you like the autocomplete is really neat. Another benefit that it has over Material UI, for example, is because it's all statically compiled, you pay far less for rendering things. So like just a div, so a styled component, I think is like 80% longer to render, and using the SX prop, I think is like 200% longer to render for Material UI. So using something like this, you essentially are getting the same as a regular element within like a basic element that's rendered in React or JS, because it's not just React.
Rob, do you do much CSS nowadays?
Yeah, we use Material UI, so I was nodding along at the SX property. But most of the experimentation wouldn't be at work, and that's why what I wanted to say with the setup with Panda is the tooling was really quick, but it kind of encourages you to be principled about your style system. And so if you're doing a once-off project, as much as I love Panda and would love to use it in a bigger project and team, I don't reach for it there because setup was fast, but it makes you think a little bit about consistent styling and a principled approach to it. So
that's exactly why I love it. Like I saw Matt Pocock be like, Panda, he doesn't care about type-safe CSS, and I'm just like, I don't want anyone to have any escape hatches anywhere. Like the design system should be truth, and give me same defaults. But like that's completely subjective. I mean, like this is a perfect example of it.
Like I'm real talk. When I start a project, I pull in material, I pull in emotion. Sometimes I even just pull in emotion, no material. And to me, that is a problem I start solving. Even honestly, like I barely do any like pre-rendering or anything when I'm just spinning. A lot of times I actually just start out doing the project straight up in V8, and then start looking at stuff like Next or Remixed later on and so forth. So there is something to be said for just like like getting a feel for kind of what you're building and what the parts are, and just like hitting the ground running, and then starting to like you don't want to necessarily spend the first hour just configuring your design system, and then you're like, oh, I need to have a color for errors. I didn't think about that.
So when I start a project, I don't pull in emotion, I pull a emotion. I just had to see the faces there. I'll generally start with like CSS resets and because vanilla CSS nowadays, especially with like nested selectors, you can do so much, and CSS variables and like computed stuff and
like
we have other colors in feature now. And
So I'm curious. I want to put in a set of same defaults. I want to limit my choices as much as possible right off the get go. That's why like normally I'd put in Tailwind or Panda or something like that. Like I don't want to think about what color my errors are. I just want to grab red 500 and I'm done. Like
those are two
I
different things.
think the important distinction is what Rob was saying there is like is it a professional versus a hobbyist project, and it's an experimentation, or is it are you building a Great Wall of China?
Even then, I'd say like a consultancy would lean heavily to Panda to set up their tooling because they invest in it once and use it over and over. But even like a startup that's yes, this is a project, it's professional or whatever. By the time they realize they've got a problem, they've been using Tailwind for 3 or 4 months, and that's why I think Panda struggles to gain mindshare over something like style components in motion. They're like, drop in, we go, let's build our own problem. And somebody took some time to think about how is CSS and JS actually supposed to work in a big, professional team, and came up with Panda. But nobody's reaching for it when you need to move fast. You're reaching for it when you want to move for a long time.
I think the other thing is as well is that I'm a very firm believer in that design systems should be retroactive. I know this is a hot take, but like this is my general approach, and I've had a lot of success with it. I don't start with the design system. Generally, you let the project grow a bit organically, and then retroactively you start formalizing a design system. Otherwise, you end up with a lot of these components that are like so flexible, but you just have a single implementation of it.
I think that's more of a business problem than a technical problem. Right? Like you can't build a product without getting customer feedback. So like you can build a prototype, but generally in products, not in software for some reason, but in product development, when we build a prototype, we throw it away and build a new thing. But in software, that doesn't seem to happen for some reason.
Yeah, maybe like, you're not working with the right people. I see that quite a bit, but yeah.
No, I would argue that quite strongly again. The unique difference is like you can. All software is clay. It never gets baked. You can continue to mold it, and unless you've got incredible discipline and time and everything, throwing your prototype away is almost. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a unique thing to software. We got the title of the slide wrong, though, I think. It says StyleX there. We've been talking about Panda for 15 minutes.
Yeah, but the reason is because of StyleX.
I'm going to drop one more point on Panda here. I'd argue that irrespective, I think Panda is still the right fit. If someone would grab Tailwind for convenience and moving quickly, you can do that in Panda. If you want stitches or CVA, you can do that in Panda. If you want primitives generated for you, like Material UI, you can do that in Panda. So like that's the thing for me is it's so feature rich over StyleX that like I don't understand why StyleX has come out. Like it just with things in place like vanilla extract, which I think the learning curve is really high in comparison to Panda. StyleX, cool, maybe as a replacement for something like Emotion. But again, you can do that in Panda. You can write styled components with Panda. Like it just does so much, and it gives you so many options based on what you're comfortable with writing. Like super interesting that StyleX has come out. I question whether they're too late to grab a piece of the pie at this point.
Yeah. Well, the problem is StyleX is #blessed by Meta, right? And
yes. So let's quickly also just take a step back and chat a bit about what these two things are. So obviously, some of you might, so some people listening to this might know about Panda already. So Panda is basically it's an attempt to get rid of all the downsides of CSS and JS by having some type of build that spits out like real CSS to some degree, instead of just actually running all that CSS in your JavaScript. Because apart from performance things, one big drawback of that is, and you see this quite a lot, is you can only start evaluating your styling once the JavaScript kicks in. So that means that if your site has a light mode and a dark mode, it can only apply the dark mode once the JavaScript loads. So what you usually get with these type of sites, I think even with YouTube you get it, is if you're in the middle of the night and your phone is on dark mode or whatever, and you're browsing the web and you go to one of these sites, and you get like this atom bomb explosion in the face of just white light, and then after a second it finally goes to dark mode. So you get lots of those type of weird things where you have to
run
wait
my
for
PC on a TV. That flashbang thing is terrible. When it's the middle of the night, you snuck out of bed because your wife's sleeping, turn on the TV and
like the new Counter-Strike flashback.
Counter-Strike 2.
Volumetric smoke.
Yeah, well, there you go. Geez, I want to like just I just want to like also like do a dark mode for the Zod documentation as well, just like for my own sanity as well, because sometimes like I'm curious about something.
Okay, everyone, let's keep.
Yeah, let's focus. Okay.
We'll keep Skulk accountable as he's going on his Christmas. With his festive break now.
It's the Christmas surprise, December surprise.
Yeah.
But
Zod better have dark mode at the.
okay, well, we'll talk about my PR in January. But effectively, so where StyleX comes in, so StyleX is effectively like I almost said React Meta's own kind of thing that's very similar. There have been some mentions about it, and I think at some point it seemed like kind of abandoned. And a couple of weeks ago, they kind of said, no, it's actually now for real. So it's kind of like the Meta team's own kind of implementation of something like Panda. So I think that's also what Ben meant when he said it's kind of blessed, is that it's official-ish. But like, how did Recoil turn out? So I don't know.
The only thing I can see coming from this is if StyleX has some interaction with React natively, with React Forget. They're in the same building. But otherwise I just don't see it. We were saying that in the docs they mention not just TypeScript but Flow as well. So Flow is still a thing in Meta. I don't know, maybe that's why StyleX exists, to support Flow types.
Because Panda doesn't do it.
The ones that aren't supported by TypeScript.
Yeah, so I don't know. This is not going in my tool bag of things to consider yet.
Yeah.
Until maybe the amazing integration with React Forget is worth it.
Oh, I see. It's actually based on open props. Okay, interesting. Open
Again,
props.
that's just saying defaults, man.
Yeah. But that's just interesting for me. It's like I kind of felt like open props never kind of got the love it deserved.
I think Rob probably hit the nail on the head there. Like the flow argument is the most coherent and likely one I've heard so far.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks for appreciating my argument, Ben. Not shots fired there.
He waited until Rob said it. He waited for Rob to say it so that he could appreciate it finally.
No, I'm a true reindeer.
But so effectively,
sorry, Mike.
So if we go on the other X, the one true x.com, and I think what is up with like everyone putting X in their product names? That's like so Y2K.
Could have a triangle logo.
Elon Musk is Y2K's love child.
But anyway, so like he basically, I don't know whether this was a single guy or whether it's the team at large.
No, just one of the creators.
One of the creators. So basically, just kind of addressed like straight out of the gate, like, okay, cool. How is Panda? It's broadly speaking about like how is Panda different than Tool X? Geez, so many X's, but we need some Vin Diesel here with the triple X. Didn't we have Vin Diesel in the last?
God, family.
This should be a recurring thing on Breakpoint. Every slide should have some relation to Vin Diesel. It's like the 3 degrees of Vin Diesel separation and JavaScript. But so basically, just kind of came out of the gate, said, okay, cool. How does StyleX and any other tool kind of relate to Pandas? And I think, like, in short, the answer is effectively, he said that he hasn't really used any other tool extensively enough to be able to answer that question meaningfully. That was my general take of it from skim reading it. Mike, I think you kind of read it a bit more in depth.
There's a comparison table right near the top that space StyleX put out, and
this comparison table.
That was it.
Interesting. Oh, geez, like we have some Twitter slap fights here. Oh man. Yo.
Yeah, maybe right at the top there.
It's also so interesting now, like seeing Dan Abramov kind of weigh in on meta stuff as someone who's not part of the team. Interesting.
Definitely got a soft spot though.
Yeah,
No bias.
I can't imagine you don't. But I saw him up here in the comments, and I was like, oh yeah, that guy. But yeah. All right, we
Long
should
story
probably
short,
move on.
it boils
Yes.
down to reactivity in pandas. Because it's statically generated or statically analyzed, you need to write Panda in a way that it can be statically analyzed. And essentially, like if you've got two different states, you've got to represent both those states and then swap between them in a way that Panda knows that you're using, but like how both of those states are styled. So there's just a little bit of a different pattern that's used for dynamic stuff there, but it's not like it's difficult by any means. And that's essentially what the example boils down to. So there was a criticism of that, but like I feel as though it's a fair criticism, but it's also a fair approach if you want the benefits of statically compiled stuff.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. Like, I don't know. It's like I also appreciate that he starts right out of the gate in terms of just saying, like, guys, please don't start fighting. But I don't know. Like, the more players in the space, the better. I think if anything, like your biggest opposition isn't tool X or tool Y. It's just like people like still like using like Bootstrap and whatever. So the more we can get people moving in the right-ish direction, the more general mind share there is for this type of approach, to me the better, even if that means there's more players in the field. But yeah, cool. Sveltekit 2. Mike, you want to tell us super quickly about it and why it's worth talking about?
Apparently, it's just CSS.
Sorry?
Sveltekit.
Yes. Look at the title. Your slide title, Skulk.
Oh,
Like,
what?
You won't find much documentation on.
Oh, geez. Like, you guys were hurrying me along. I wanted to do these slides proper, and you guys were like, no, Skulk.
Speed run.
Finish up.
No man.
We need to get going. Yeah.
Okay, so you won't find it in the docs, but Rich Harris has been teasing it for the last like week or two. Some newsletters have gone out, like generating hype. Some X posts have been generating hype. So I went and dug through the changes in the version 2 branch itself. It's pretty similar to what we saw with Astro, updating to V8, updating to Sol 3, changing how error handling is done, and changing how some routing is done. So routing out relative by default. And if you're trying to navigate away from a Sveltekit app, you can't do it using the router. You need to do it using the window object. And that is 90% of the change for Sveltekit 2, which for me is really surprising considering like they're generally so progressive with their major version changes.
Yeah. Especially
like
with
going
Ruins. Like kind of like that entire ecosystem, just the shake up that Ruins was.
For sure. And I'm not sure if you remember what a big deal it was when Sveltekit hit version 1. They went from file-based routing to folder-based routing.
Yeah.
That was a massive paradigm shift. And it like
that's not my address, FYI. But anyway, thanks for trying to dox me. I am in the northern suburbs, FYI, but not. Thanks, Sveltekit. Thanks, Sveltekit, for doxing me like on a live stream. Okay.
Putting you on blast right there.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, super interesting. Okay. After them ditching TypeScript, after Ruins, after all these like super hype things, we've got like a major version that is largely a deprecation of old features.
Okay, and it's interesting that it's kind of so under the radar-ish.
It's most likely going to be released by the end of this week, maybe by the end of next week, knowing how the Svelte team works. So that's why I had to go a little bit sneaky deaky and snoop around a bit. But yeah, we either talk about it now, we talk about it in January. So we may as well get to it now.
Yeah. And it's interesting. We're probably going to see a lot of this type of thing where the same with Astro as well. You know, so I think the last episode or before that, like kind of we still spoke about Astro 3, and now we're already at Astro 4. And it's the exact same. It's very minimal changes, but it's because most of these tools are based on V8, and because V8 did a big V8 5 release, most of them update their stuff internally as well, and it is a breaking release. So yeah, I guess that's how you end up with like all these big number releases now all of a sudden with very little features.
Not to be a pedant, but we went from Astro 3.4. That was their big release to version 4. So
yeah.
I got that was not the intention.
Okay. Well, there you go. I got out Astroed. Yeah.
Brought up Solid 5. I think that's Q1 projection.
No, that milestone is just the 2.0 milestone. It might happen to have 5 in it, but sorry, I'm referring to a link I just shared in the chat that you can actually see what's going into Svelte 2.0.
Awesome. They're also doing images. That's one thing that I forgot about. But also, I don't know if that is a. At this point, I don't know if it's a huge deal.
Here's this little sneaky boy.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone use Svelte in production here? Me neither.
That is almost long enough for that.
Okay. No, I don't know. I appreciate Svelte. It's just I don't know. It doesn't gel that nicely with me. Too much black magic happening under the hood, which might be a good or a bad thing depending on how you like to code.
Svelte is too smart for someone like me.
Maybe, yeah. Definitely too smart for me. I don't know about you, but yeah. All right.
About forget, but let's leave that discussion for a special edition when it comes out.
For Valentine's Day.
Buy Ben and Mike so they can just drop it the whole time.
Cool.
This one.
Let's chat about Maglev. All right.
Maglev
V4.
Okay, so
that V4.
Compilers are weird. So sometimes when you want to do like a good optimizing compiler, you actually do like a bad one first and then pump it into a second one. Like single pass compilation, especially in the optimizing space, is not necessarily going to yield the best results. And there's all kinds of stuff you can do, right? So you can do a compilation step to take some code to make it look more uniform or follow more established patterns, and then feed it into an optimizing compiler that recognizes those established patterns and then can optimize on top of that. So V8 traditionally has had 2 of these in its JIT pipeline. They were Turbofan and Sparkplug, I think, or Jetstream. Turbofan and Sparkplug. Turbofan and Sparkplug because engines. So Maglev goes and sits in between the 2. And its goal is it's an optimizing compiler for the JIT stage. And I think it's there it is on the page. Nice. It's called good enough code, fast enough. So there are various heuristics that V8 will apply when deciding what its JIT pipeline will look like. But as you can see on that page there, we're seeing some pretty good benefits coming from the full all three compilation steps for the JIT. And Maglev is just the newest addition.
Okay. Was it prompted by anything specific, or did they just be like, let's
V8's
just make...
entire reason to exist has got to go fast, right? That's why they don't.
Yeah. Okay, so they were just like, yep, let's just continue still making it. Okay, so there wasn't anything new that came up or any developments that made like something like this more feasible. They were just like, cool, time to just make it even more fast.
Scroll up a little bit here. I don't know how many people will like down to the graphs with the many colors. So there you see ignition is just vanilla, and then sparkplug is plus a optimizing compiler, ignition and turbofan, not so much, ignition, sparkplug, and turbofan. Wow. So that's kind of the impact of each individual step in the JIT on runtime code, which is really, really cool to see. This page has some like S-Tracy kind of output, which is really, really interesting. And there's a lot of new school-ish thought being applied to Maglev. Doing an optimizing compiler in a garbage collected language is even harder than just doing an optimizing compiler. I think optimizing compilers are probably the hardest long tail problem in computer science, because it just never ever ends. And then introducing like a garbage collector just makes it even harder. Anyway, they did a great job with Maglev. If you're into compilers, go read the code. There's some really neato tricks and like post 80s stuff being implemented, which is cool to see. Yeah, Maglev.
Yeah. Now we just need to get rid of the DOM, and then we're good to go.
Isn't that what
incremental games? It really gets like more and more complicated, and like that just-in-time compilation time, like it becomes a thing of like, is it worth those incremental gains? So I can imagine this is crazy to implement art like in something like V8 that's already highly optimized.
So you're seeing like single-digit improvements, but remember, like there are heuristics that decide whether certain stages of the JIT should be included or not. And I don't exactly know what all of those are, but I'm assuming they're smart enough to know when it's going to be a waste of time to do these things or not. But also because there is normalization from Sparkplug first. So what I described in the like taking the code and making it look like something the optimizing compiler is more likely to deal with. Because you have guarantees about what's coming in, you can make a lot of assumptions and performance optimizations in your compiler to avoid having to be super slow. Anyway.
Yeah, fun times. But like this. Sorry, go ahead, Robert.
I wanted to ask. I mean, this is in V8, and so we mentioned, it's moving Chrome ahead and Chromium-based browsers ahead of others. Is there space for WebAssembly to allow people to target, to avoid JIT improvements or the discrepancy between the JIT in Firefox and Chrome?
Yeah, well. So the best optimizing compiler in the world, fight me internet, is LLVM. And like, no matter what you do, because optimizing compilers are a long tail problem, catching up to LLVM is going to take a monumental effort. And like, if you can LLVM your code into like a bytecode that can just run on the runtime, then you're good. So yes, totally, what you're saying is true. Like, WebAssembly allows you to shift compiled code optimized in a way that you think is appropriate, and optimized with compilers that like might only be appropriate for your use case. You can do all kinds of things. generalized JITs, while useful and moving the ball forward, are never going to compete with specialized solutions.
But I think at the scale of something like V8, even if you get a 0.00% increase, like just the scale, I assume this would translate to Node as well. So
energy consumption is super interesting. That is awesome.
That's cool, right? So the counter argument is like GPT and most of the LLMs are heavily Python dependent for pandas and kicks my like actual optimized code coming from LLM arguments out of the ring.
Yeah. While we were talking, I quickly did a Google, and it looks like WASM also goes through Turbofan. I'm not sure if it'll benefit from Maglev, but I mean, you get your specialized LLVM compilation, but WASM's the intermediate format. So to run, it still looks like Turbofan is on the compilation pipeline for it, which is good news if you use it, because you'll get the benefits, but I guess not so good for Firefox and Safari.
And this is good. I think like no one would ever say like this is bad. No one's like it needs to be slower. But like average website, like that's not also really where the bottlenecks lie.
Remember, it's Node benefits from it, right?
Yeah, that is true. But I would even say, like it's most of it is just like badly written code. But I guess, if you're one of those teams that write really good code, then this is obviously. Yeah.
Well, the point of an optimizing compiler is you can write bad code and it doesn't do that. You can write your recursive function tail recursively accidentally, and the optimizing compiler will turn it into a while loop for you, and everyone's happy.
Okay, there we go. Yeah.
Small rabbit hole on WASM here. Like, do you guys think it's worth, or rather, how many use cases actually benefit shipping WASM? Like, if I look at Maui, like it worries me. Worries me that people think it's a great idea. There definitely are cases where it makes a lot of sense. Like Figma is.
I think we kind of have
incredible.
an expert on the call. Like I think for your day job, Rob, WASM is probably one of those appropriate use cases.
Yeah, I can tell you, there's two use cases where we benefit from WASM. One is you get access. So we do a lot of geometry, 2D and 3D geometry based things. So you get access to the existing libraries written in C++, things like Skia, that you couldn't get in the browser any other way. So yeah, highly performant number crunching libraries are usually not written in JavaScript, so you can pull them in.
Hopefully not.
Hey, we have web workers. Just throw in one of those bad boys.
I mean, there's a WASM version of one of the libraries you use and a normal JavaScript version, and actually we've seen memory benefits as well, obviously. And the other one is just if we wanted to highly optimize something, not just in the browser, you want to run it in the browser and on the back end, then we'll use Rust to build a library that we can call into from both. But I guess for things like Maui and other languages, people just don't want to write JavaScript. So kudos to them. But there's definitely, and WASM's not only going to be a browser thing, right? I'm sure you're aware of just treating it as a sandbox. And I can't remember the name now, but the API for systems as well. So WASM something.
Microcontrollers.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're still, it's been around for several years now, but we're still in the early days of WASM.
Yeah, so I brought it up specifically with the context of Maui in mind, because I had someone reach out to me recently and they asked me, how do you debug Maui in the browser? And I have no idea. I was like, the first thing I asked was like, what's your initial bundle size? And the guy was like 11 megs.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. So, how do you spell
You're
it?
welcome.
You just missed the
You're
M.
welcome.
Oh, I have WAS. Okay, there you go. I was like, that's how you spell it, right? So
Blazor, I can never remember which is which. It could be Blazor.
the Blazers.
Yeah, Blazor does it. Effectively, the C# equivalent of
Yeah.
like React server components.
Well, the difference there is like Meta actually uses React server components, whereas like Microsoft products tend to not be built with Blazor for some reason.
Yeah.
So
Man,
take
some
that
tasty
for
dog
an
food right there.
take that for endorsements.
It's interesting. It's interesting hearing you say that like a big part of the appeal is interop, which is interesting because I think it oftentimes gets pitched as oh, it's gonna like make the web fast, which yeah,
The
like
web is
I mean,
already
yeah, the
best
web is
software I've
fast. The
seen-
DOM is crap. I wanted to say a different word. Slow.
the best summary I've seen of like packaging WASM in a way people can understand it is when the founder of Docker said if WASM existed back then, they wouldn't have written Docker. We're in the early days. You can think of it similar as like packaging code up in Docker containers, except it's thinner, lighter. It runs in the browser, which Docker doesn't.
There's some interesting stuff. Like obviously there's that WordPress thing that they kind of used WASM to like spin up an entire WordPress instance in your browser. I also think there's a lot of like interesting stuff happening in like SQLite world as well.
Didn't it enable people to also make like a sandbox?
Since right now is wildly entertaining and interesting. Sorry, Mike, I interrupted you.
Sorry, could you repeat that because I missed a bit of it and I'm really curious.
SQLite. SQLite is just wildly like innovating at the moment.
Yeah,
especially
I don't want to.
Yeah, application space, like the idea of replicating SQLite reliably, and it's just the things it opens up is crazy. But there's lots of SQLite.
Rob, why aren't you reining these guys in?
Me,
like,
because
Rob,
they share.
That can have like a cohesive or a.
Because like I share, because I find it super interesting, like once you start going off topic about stuff that I don't find interesting, like let's have a chat. But let's maybe close off this one before we move on to the next thing. Have any of you guys played around with stuff like Terso and so forth?
I did Lightsail. Terso is interesting. Lightsail resonates with me more on a like fundamentals level. But there's a bunch of them. There's like the one that is it Lightsail, like something like that.
It's
where you like mount a file system for, and there's lots of cool stuff. The Fly.io did a bunch of good blog posts around it. Like, that team's doing some interesting things as well.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Let's talk about this guy. So Ben's little favorite, the little web tool chain that could. Ben, do you want to tell us about Biome and like how Biome fit into the Prettier picture recently?
Like, I don't know how no one saw this coming. How like the Hacker News thread with this Prettier bounty announcement wasn't just like Biome. And so Rome was a single toolchain for the web written in Rust, and then it had a big SAD and became Biome, and then everyone kind of forgot about it for a little bit,
Oh, the site's down even.
Because there's nothing that does as much for community trust and like engagement as putting a lot of effort into something and then just going radio silent and then having someone else come back and say, we got this, we're gonna revive this project.
Yeah.
So it just kind of escaped the collective consciousness. Prettier, the Prettier team like care a lot, and they want faster, better JavaScript tooling. And look, the Rust tooling for other languages and for Rust itself is pretty fast and pretty ergonomic. So they went, cool, let's take some money and let's create a bounty for a Prettier compatible formatter written in Rust, because we're reaching the edge of where we can really optimize Prettier anymore. And then Biome came out and went like, that's what we do. And the prize was for something like 95% Prettier compatibility. So Prettier is also a very long tail problem, but yeah, some people just spend some time on Biome, getting it up to the number, claim the prize, and like I'm trying to be a little bit jesty here, just for the sake of being jesty. I think all props to the Biome team and the individuals and contributors that made this happen. Really cool initiative from the Prettier team, really forward looking. My hope would have been that a new contender would have entered the space with this initiative, and I'm assuming that was the original intent of the Prettier team. But this kind of doesn't make Biome relevant again, because of like the technical achievement or anything. It just rebuilds that trust that was lost, and I'm very happy about that.
Because the whole point about something like Prettier is that you don't want to spend time configuring things, and you don't want to spend time thinking about things. And if you don't have a guarantee that, hey, you're maybe gonna have to change up the solution, or you don't know what's gonna happen with this thing, maybe it's gonna get renamed from Rome to Biome and become a completely different project. You know, like that kind of defeats the purpose. Like, I think the whole point about something like Prettier is it's just plug and play, and there you go. And you don't want to configure things. You don't want to argue with people. You just like want to pull the thing in and be done. So
I think
Dino.
I
told you about Dino.
There's this new thing coming up called Dino that Mike's really excited about. It's going to change everything.
So I think what makes me sad, sorry, Mike, is like Biome would eventually have reached 95% Prettier compatibility regardless of this. This just accelerate. What I would have liked to see was other heavy hitters being spawned out of this initiative, but like what I want is irrelevant. Like, good things happen. These are all good things, and like I'm really excited about like the healthy discourse around all of this.
Yeah,
Sorry.
same here. Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I think
Mike,
I don't think that was the best outcome for Prettier. Like, I don't think that's what they were looking for, right? Like you were saying, Ben, they were hoping a new candidate in Rust, maybe they could include it in their library. Like, I don't know. But there were some good outcomes for Prettier directly, as that they found some optimizations that they can already implement, and some discrepancies in how they handle code. Anyway.
I think it's been an insightful like outcome regardless, because it shows that the problem isn't technical. The problem is just like mindshare and like usage and so forth, which isn't necessarily great news. But people are still using jQuery, so I don't know. You're gonna doesn't really matter. Things have momentum, regardless of what you do or how you improve.
Such a good
Advent of-
point. I saw a new project from a competitor to the client that we're consulting at Peach Payments, and I thought I'd do a little bit of snooping. And I saw a fairly new product that is using jQuery amongst other things that I was very surprised to see in almost 2024.
Now we just need to port jQuery to Rust, huh? Or WASM.
jQuery,
We need to get jQuery. We need to get jQuery and WASM.
Guys, jQuery X, that's where it's at.
Xquery. There you go.
I'm just gonna
All right.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Advent of Code. I actually knew about this, but it always seemed like something intended for people way smarter than me. Learning that Ben and Robert have some interest in it has probably convinced me even more that it's for people smarter than me. You guys want to tell us what it is? I also appreciate that when you Google it, how does this even happen? How does anyway?
You should go to the site, click on the site, and then you'll see. Like the site has got a very terminal emulator vibe to it, and
it's just interesting that Google actually shows.
That's probably intentional, is what.
Do you
I
think
was going to
so?
say, yeah, like
I
that
don't
you
know.
have control over.
Oh, that is true. Yes.
if that's
Jeez, this is so 2010, huh? When all the cool people were putting stuff in the actual. Okay, interesting.
I'll say.
Do you consider yourself a cool people?
So the creator of Advent of Code, Eric Wastel, also created Vanilla.js, and he's actually got some comparisons to jQuery and other like prototype.js in his page. So if you've forgotten about Vanilla.js, it'll be fun to go look at it. But yeah, as a summary of Advent of Code, every year he releases an Advent calendar of code problems. He's been going since 2015. Massive community around it, and yeah, there's usually a story for each year, some sort of narrative that you follow, and then as you finish one puzzle, you unlock the rest. You can tackle it in any language, so you'll get inputs and for your problem, and you've got to enter the output, and that's it. And you can tackle it in whatever way you want.
Okay.
What else? We're on day 13 already, so the challenges tend to get harder over time. So we're in day 13, but they don't disappear. So you can go tackle any year that's been launched already. There's massive community around it, as I said. So people are sharing what they struggle with, how they approach solutions, and various different languages. I'm using this to brush up on my Python.
Oh, I see. Okay, so you provide the output. You don't actually. I see. Okay, so you can do it in whatever.
People do it in SQL, in the type system in TypeScript.
I'd be curious how well ChatGPT fares in this.
It's actually banned, I think. Like LLMs are banned from.
So it's banned. It's banned in the same way that it's banned for your postgrad papers. I recently
very different ways. Like Advent Code is purely about like your individual growth, right?
Yeah.
It is an opportunity for you to engage in fun competitive programming and grow yourself while like engaging with the community and sharing that. But like it's about you. And look, if you can use an LLM in a way where it's a tool and it's helping you grow, sure. But if you're using it maliciously in a just like I want to be there's a leaderboard as well. So like if you're using an LLM to get on the leaderboard, then it's very, very against the spirit of Advent of Code.
Yeah. No, I was definitely being facetious. But
I think it's.
I would be curious to see how it fares. Yeah.
So when I've been playing with Python recently for LLM style work, I've got GitHub Copilot on, and it makes learning the language so much easier. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to do this. I'm actually doing it in JavaScript and in Python, but I was doing Python with my brother, and so we did it in code spaces, and it didn't have Copilot there. And so, I mean,
Interesting.
Copilot is just an LLM. And so suddenly I felt like my hands were tied behind my back because I'm really fluent in Python if Copilot's next to me.
Yeah.
So
That's the thing.
still
Does it
trying
actually make it
learn the
easier to
language.
learn Python, or does it make it easier to learn the patterns that are used in like Python libraries? Or it's always something that I wrestle with.
I still learn a ton about like JavaScript things from Copilot. Like, I'm not gonna lie, sometimes I'm like, it suggests something, and I'd be like, that's actually a super interesting way to do that. I haven't considered that. Yeah.
And so, I mean, when I was doing this, I didn't put in the problem and ask Copilot, and they're actually written in a way that it's pretty hard to ask Copilot, I'd say. But it expects you to.
You're probably
break
gonna
down
hit your tokens before you get an answer. Yeah.
You have to figure out how you want to approach the problem, and then it will help you put it into code. But I think Copilot's a discussion all on its own and how it influences people.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is when I'm picking up a new language, like if it helps me with the syntax, like I don't learn the syntax and I apply standard principles to my deving, and then as soon as I turn it off, I'm just like, I know nothing. Like I know
the question is,
how I've learned.
Is having Copilot turned off going to be a thing, right? Like we've got, type hints and IntelliSense and VS Code, and it's just the next generation. There's a generation of coders coming up who've never coded without it.
Yeah. It's probably more IntelliSense than IntelliSense is because there's a little bit more IntelliSense.
Well,
that bombshell.
I have to say something that I find so annoying is that when you think it's your IntelliSense and it's actually Copilot, and you're like, you get an error for, oh, this property doesn't exist or something, and then you're like, but it auto-completed it for me. How can it not exist? You know, it's like, damn you, Copilot! I thought you were
Copilot is it cannot do brackets, closing brackets and closing strings correctly.
What is up with that?
I
don't know.
Drops an extra quotation.
That is so interesting. I've seen it as well, and a lot of people have mentioned it.
Like it hasn't found the brace matching the macro that it likes most.
it's like it's kryptonite as brackets. You know, it's like it can write any code as long as it doesn't have brackets in it.
If you've ever tried to write a parser, you will understand why.
The brackets work on my machine. I love it. Like I never think about brackets.
Do you have auto closing brackets on? Because I think that's it. It sends it off to the context before the auto closing brackets come in, and then
interesting. That's super interesting.
I actually code my way around auto closing brackets quite often because it gets in the way of Copilot.
I struggle as much with auto closing brackets as Copilot does. So
it's just because statistically you're less likely to close the bracket than actually not have it closed. So it's just like modeling like human behavior.
Yeah.
Cool.
We are over time, and I want to reach out, or I want to say to Rob, thank you so much for joining us.
This has been great.
Really, you've been a pleasant guest. It's great to have other people here. I'm guessing all of us are going to take turns to switch out, but thanks for making the time. I mean, I know this is probably Skulk Space, but I'm just super hyped about the chat we've had today.
It's been awesome. I really enjoyed being here. I don't get much exposure to this sort of discussion, so it's been really cool.
I'm definitely gonna bully you into a Fedsaw talk. That's the long game here. So brace yourself. Yeah, cool. But thanks for joining, Rob. Thanks for joining, Ben, Mike.
One other thing I want to raise. Ben, don't you need to do the plug?
Yes, I wanted to ask. Ben, who is Operativa?
Operativa is our sponsor and also a platform engineering company / consultancy that builds tools for developers. Our mission is to help teams deliver better products with less code. We're going to be releasing a ORM in next year for TypeScript. That's going to be pretty great in our opinion, and hopefully delivers massive impact to your teams. We are always hiring for individuals who want to help our partners or ourselves deliver business impact regularly, and contribute to platform level solutions. We mostly partner with companies in the financial services and infosec industries. And you can reach us at just ben@operativa.dev.
Yeah, or just Google Operativa.
And get to our website that hasn't been updated in a year.
And that has the broken character.
It says two things, the broken character.
Yes. All right. Okay. We're so busy writing code, we don't have time to fix our website. There you go. Yeah. It's just solving real problems. All right, cool guys. This was amazing. Thanks everyone for joining. And then have a happy holidays and all of that stuff. And then we'll chat in Jan.
Enjoy the festive season.
Happy holidays, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.